Most people think listening means being quiet while someone else talks. Psychologically, that is almost never what's happening. What's usually happening is silent rehearsal. We are waiting for our turn, correcting the other person in our head, preparing our response, or scanning for where we disagree. The mouth is quiet, but the mind is already elsewhere. That distinction matters because real listening does something very specific to the human nervous system, and most conversations never reach it. Active listening is not a communication trick. It's not a social skill. It's a psychological intervention. And when you understand why it works, you also understand why so many conversations feel tense, circular, or emotionally exhausting, even when no one's yelling. Let's start with the most basic layer. When someone speaks, their nervous system is not just transmitting information, it's scanning the environment for safety. Long before content matters, the brain is asking a quieter question. Am I being received? Am I being evaluated? This is not a conscious process, it's automatic. Tone, facial orientation, interruptions, pacing, eye contact, and stillness, all of that feed into that calculation. When those cues suggest judgment, impatient, or competition, the nervous system shifts into a defensive posture. When they suggest attunement and attention, the nervous system relaxes. This is why people calm down simply by being heard, not fixed, not reassured, not corrected. Heard. Nothing about the external problem may change, but internally, threat decreases, muscle tension softens, emotional reactivity drops, cognitive clarity improves. People often mistake this for agreement. It's not, it's regulation. This is one reason arguments escalate so quickly. Two nervous systems are both trying to be understood, while neither feels safe enough to listen. Each person is talking louder, longer, or more forcefully, not because they want to dominate necessarily, but because they're trying to secure psychological recognition. Once you see this, a lot of human behavior starts to make sense. There's also a cognitive layer to this. Humans make meaning through narrative. We do not experience life as raw data. We experience it as a story. When someone is talking through a situation, they're often trying to organize something internally that hasn't yet settled into a coherent shape. Active listening supports that process. It gives the speaker space to hear themselves think. As they talk, concentrations emerge, emotions clarify, and priorities reorganize. Insight often appears without the listener adding anything new. Let's think this through together. This is why advice is usually premature. When someone interrupts this process with solutions, they are imposing structure before the speaker has finished building their own. The result is resistance, not relief. Most people think resistance means stubbornness, but psychologically it usually means loss of agency. You see, when someone jumps in too early with advice, reframing, or reassurance, the speaker's experience is quietly taken away from them. The message becomes, I know what this means better than you do. Even if the advice is good, the nervous system often reacts by tightening up. Agency has been disrupted. This is why people say things like, I know but, or that's not really what I mean. They're trying to reclaim authorship over their own experience. Active listening preserves authorship. It keeps the meaning-making process where it belongs. There's also an identity component that is easy to underestimate. Being listened to affirms psychological existence. It communicates something very basic and very powerful. Your inner world is real. It matters, and it's intelligible to another human being. This is not about agreement. Again, you can understand someone fully and still disagree with them, But without understanding, disagreement feels like erasure. When people don't feel understood, they often escalate emotionally, repeat themselves, or harden their position, not because they are irrational, but because their identity feels threatened. They're trying to establish reality. You see this everywhere, in relationships, and in workplaces, in classrooms, and especially online. Conversations collapse, not because people lack intelligence, but because no one feels recognized as a thinking, feeling subject. From a developmental perspective, this shouldn't be surprising. Early in life, emotional regulation is not something we do alone. It's learned through responsive relationships. When a caregiver notices, responds, and adjusts to a child's emotional signals, the child learns that emotions are survivable, meaningful, and shareable. When that process is inconsistent or absent, people often grow into adults who struggle to regulate emotion internally. They rely more heavily on external validation, control, or argument to stabilize themselves. Active listening in adulthood recreates this regulatory pattern in a mature form, not as parenting, but as attunement. It offers the nervous system the same message. You are not alone with this experience, and it does not need to overwhelm you. This is why active listening feels disproportionately powerful. It's working at a very old level of the human system. Now, it's important to be clear about what active listening is not. It's not passivity. It's not submission. It's not agreement. It's not endorsing harmful behavior or false beliefs. No, active listening is about sequencing, understanding something before evaluation. Reception comes before response. Without that order, communication breaks down. You can actively listen and still say no. You can actively listen and still set boundaries. You can actively listen and still disagree strongly. But when listening is skipped, everything that follows is adversarial. There's also a discipline involved that many people underestimate. Active listening requires restraint. It requires tolerating silence. It requires letting ambiguity sit without rushing to resolve it. It requires staying present with emotional discomfort rather than regulating your own anxiety by filling space. Many interruptions happen not because the listener is arrogant, but because they're uncomfortable. Silence can feel exposing. Uncertainty can feel destabilizing. Advice can feel like control. Good listeners can feel those impulses and not act on them. This is why active listening is cognitively demanding. It requires suppressing self-referential processing instead of asking, what do I think, or how do I respond? The listener is tracking meaning, emotion, and structure in someone else's narrative. When that happens, something interesting occurs. The conversation deepens without effort. The speaker often arrives at insights on their own. Emotional intensity drops. New perspectives emerge organically. This isn't magic, it's alignment with how the mind actually works. You can see the absence of this everywhere in modern culture. Public discourse is reactive, performative, and brittle. People talk past one another. They escalate quickly and retreat into slogans or things that they've heard on the news. Social media rewards immediacy, not understanding. Attention is fragmented. Listening is transactional. And in that environment, being genuinely listened to feels rare, which is why people cling to it when they find it, and why its absence produces so much anger. When people stop feeling heard, they stop listening. And when that happens, no amount of information or intelligence saves the conversation. So if there's a takeaway here, it's not to be nicer or use better communication skills. It's this. Human systems function better when they feel recognized. Active listening works because it reduces threat, it restores agency, it stabilizes identity, and it supports meaning making. It creates the conditions under which clarity can emerge. When you listen actively, you're not just hearing words, you are participating in the psychological infrastructure that allows another person to think, to feel, to regulate more effectively. That's not a soft skill. It's one of the most structurally important human capacities we have, and it is far rarer than we like to believe.